Greetings, gentle viewers! I have but two words to say to you. Italian Arthouse Reanimator Remake. Now, I realise that's technically four words, but Italian and Arthouse are a tautology, and it's not technically a remake. This is a new adaptation of the original H.P. Lovecraft short stories that were collectively called Herbert Reanimator, which the earlier films were based on. It started life as a web series and later evolved into a feature film. This was made by Ivan Zuccon, who also made Italian Arthouse Color to Space, and the Italian Arthouse Shunned House, probably making him the most prolific Lovecraft adapter this side of Stuart Gordon. Unlike Stuart Gordon, he takes plenty of liberties by really making the material his own. You see, behind all the florid prose, Lovecraft's brand of horror was personal to him. He had universal themes, terror of the unknown or being tiny in the grand scheme of things, but how he dealt with them in his work was intensely personal. In a bad way. I really hope I don't need to go into the racism. This is why most of the best adaptations of his work are so removed from the originals in the details. People usually replace his often hideous issues with other stuff, usually things that are a bit more personal to them. I think the best example of that would be Cthulhu, which doesn't feature Cthulhu, and somehow reimagines The Shadow over Innsmouth as a story of the horrors of Smalton homophobia. Now, I say that most of the best Lovecraft adaptations change a bunch, but there are some excellent ones that are accurate as fuck, like the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society's versions of The Call of Cthulhu and Whisper in the Dark. This film takes more liberties than most adaptations of Lovecraft. Hell, it manages to be further removed from the source material than any of the Jeffrey Combs ones, which is an achievement because not only are they comedies, but a severed penis fights a rat in one of them. And I think I might have got sidetracked a couple of times there. Anyway, Ivan Zuccon's Lovecraft films aren't perfect, they're sometimes impenetrable, and they don't have the budget needed to do themselves justice, but they're interesting and they're all very him. I mean, I watched his version of The Shunned House without even knowing that he'd done a version of The Shunned House, and it took me less than 10 minutes to work out that he'd made it. This is just a really long way of saying that while I'm going to take the piss out of this, I really appreciate Ivan Zuccon's work. Obvious warts and all. And I think more people should buy copies of his stuff. Anyway...
Se la vita ti infrange il cuore, tu infrangi la vita.
Well, someone's upset that I used the other Reanimator theme song. You know, the memorable one. Can you really blame me, though? The intro is nice and all, but the theme song doesn't encourage anyone to move their dead bones, bones, bones. Though you might have to reanimate your feet after listening to it. We open on these three. Now, this might look like an adaptation of John Paul Sartre's No Exit, but nah, it's something much simpler. A room full of reanimants. Look, a fourth one is symbolically conquering death by being unfridged. They've all been brought back to life and trapped in this room for reasons that will remain murky for the rest of time. They hear a noise and scurry back to their slabs, indicating that Herbert West, Reanimator, doesn't know that he succeeded in reanimating them. Now, you might have some light confusion over who Herbert West is, so please allow me to allay them by saying that it's not the sinister, Herbert West-looking guy, but Italy-Italian Dom DeLuise who he's chained up. Italian Brandon Ruth, as Jeffrey Combs, looks concerned about all the seemingly dead reanimants, so he decides to make sure they're dead by injecting them with Sunny Delight. I gotta say that playing dead like that is pretty intelligent for a group whose normal level of cunning is using their own skull as a battering ram. Yeah, just like that. Okay, what have we learned so far? Her name. And that while all she can see is darkness, her pupils don't agree.
Segui la luce, Elizabeth.
They have ways of making you follow the light. Okay, so Fake West has already perfected mind control. Although they don't have that much of a mind to control. It's fairly remedial when it comes to mad science, but it's a good start.
Te l'ho detto. Non servono catene.
Yeah, but they are more fun though.
Lei chi è? Non te la ricordi? Dovrei.
I don't blame him. It's hard to recognize her when she's not naked, actively rotting and laughing at Jack Nicholson in a Kubrick film. Anyway, this is all an excuse to allow Brandon Ruth as Jeffrey Combs to inject him full of flashbacks, some of whom are located inside Guinness adverts. Turns out that Herbert West was a bit of a hermit. He's so isolated that he had to make his own CBD edibles. Now, he's creating the reanimation fluid, and not for sensible, mad science reasons like Combs' version. Now, it's because he wants to bring his daughter, who was run over by a glamour mag photo shoot, back to life. Now, one of the most baffling things about this film,
and there are many,
is how some shots are beautiful, but others wouldn't look out of place in an asylum film. Unlike a bad asylum film. These two images are just seconds apart. This is basically what Zack Snyder might come up with if he had to design a Renaissance painting. And this is two people under a rain machine, not very well composited into a shot via green screen. Anyway, she's dead, and Herbert West reacted in the rational way by turning into Slavoj Zizek, banning colour from his property, collecting CGI steam, and trying to bring her back to life.
Avresti dovuto fermarti. Fermarti sarebbe stato il più grande gesto d'amore.
Apparently, when you die in this, you become an angry fan of the original Reanimator films.
Fermarti sarebbe stato il più grande gesto d'amore.
Gonna disagree with her disembodied voice a tad. The greatest act of love might have been not murdering her after bringing her back to life. Now, I'm not a parent anymore, but I don't think there's an overreaction to her wanting to go hang out with her friends on a school night. Of course, it could just be that he's having trouble getting the reanimation fluid just right. Either way, he tries again and again and again.
Therefore proving that heaven doesn't have pearly gates, but a revolving door.
Se la vita ti infrange il cuore, tu infrangi la vita. I must break you.
A reanimated abomination, child, isn't just for Christmas, dude. It's for life. Yeah. Like that.
Perhaps I'm just weird, but I think the second greatest act of love might be not bringing her back to life after murdering her, after bringing her back to life after murdering her, after bringing her back to life.
Non basta rianimare il corpo. Devo recuperare la sua anima.
We're less than 10 minutes in and he's already moved beyond Reanimator to Beyond Reanimator. I'm impressed. A few decades ago, it took the Hammer Frankenstein movies until their fourth film to introduce soul transferal.
It's like we're approaching the singularity, but instead of computers, it's a recurring horror plot.
Anyway, the experiments continue in either a very cold room or he has a theory that people are a bit like cheese and mold is somehow beneficial. Well, at least we now know his doctorate wasn't in metallurgy. You know, they never really explain where he got all these bodies. Maybe he's a mortician, he's only really excelling at the being creepy part of the job. Anyway, because a man's love for his child is directly proportional to the amount of times he's willing to murder her, he eventually succeeds in bringing her back to life.
At least I'm guessing he does. It happened off screen.
Regardless, she's none the worse for wear. Oh no, the worst wearing happens when he almost instantly sends her off to boarding school to study music. Which makes you wonder why he bothered to save her in the first place. His lab/morgue, where he stashes his hopes along with the other carcasses, is musty with a fog of depression. Oh, no, sorry, it's just the monochrome. Sometimes it's hard to tell. How'd Dr. West get a daughter anyway? Did he tryst with a bubble-headed co-ed? Actual Combs will be so disappointed.
You're not even a second-rate scientist.
Una vita intera. E poi il Dottor West.
Now, you might be thinking to yourself that Herbert West is a terrifically authentic Italian name. And if so, then hello, Ivan Zuccon. I quite like your work.
Il Dottor West ha sconfitto la morte.
You see, this is why I had Dan Kane to talk to in the other films. He acted like a corpse in a very different way.
He was dead. Twice.
Molto bravo.
Well, it was a group effort. Time for a celebration. Because he's a classy drunk, he's got a bottle or 12 of the second cheapest wine in the area. And tonight he's pairing it with that iMac. A classic choice. But seeing as much of this film seems to be taking place at some point last century, it makes it look like he took some time off from killing his daughter to invent time travel. So, why is he drinking? Alcoholism, also Italian, but also because one of the reanimants, his daughter, is still in the afterlife, which means he brought her back without a soul. But, soulless or not, his daughter eventually came back seemingly okay.
Perché tu eri pura, innocente. Solo con te ha funzionato.
Pretty sure it worked with her because she's studying music, the industry where a soulless white person is more commonly known as a Grammy winner.
Anyway, his despair gets so bad that he stabs himself in the heart with his own reanimating fluid.
Se non mi uccidi ridammi la vita, perché questa non lo è.
Ouch.
Bad idea, you might think, but it's actually genius. If he regrets killing himself, he can just walk it off. After he wanders around the minimalist theatre set they've decided is the afterlife, I mean.
This is not what I expected this place to look like at all. Yeah, we got totally lied to by our album covers.
Well, that was quick.
Actually, I think he's trying to find his daughter's soul, but clarities for other films with the word Reanimator in the title. Anyway, he settles for the next best thing, some flowers made immortal by keeping in reanimating fluid, which is kind of genius in a middle-aged Etsy fan kind of way. Suddenly, we're about 15 years later, and Eleanor West has lived long enough for me to give a fuck about her name. She's a musician, performing mainly in black voids they're pretending are this grand opera house.
No, it's a Reanimator film. I said I wanted violence, not violins.
That tiny little squeak at the end was a musical mic drop. Now, her violining sounds like shit to me, but they're Italians, so I assume they understand classical music better than I do. Among the flowers left in her dressing room are the immortal ones left by her father, which brings back the memory of her dad shooting her. But seeing as that was a very large part of her childhood, it's probably not that big a deal. And we're in a cafe. Coffee, good cakes, a woman who won't shut up, frantic gesturing, a bell on the door, a guy with a beard. If a generic asshole Italian cop, a centurion, and a gangster walked in, this would officially be the most Italian scene in film history. Because, rather worryingly, the film seems to think that being reanimated is indistinguishable from being on the autism spectrum, everything is overpowering her. The noise, the stimulation, the eating, her.
Buoni, non riesco a resistere.
Dopo mi aspettano 2 ore di spinning per smaltire queste prelibatezze. Cosa stavo dicendo? Sì, il tuo violino. A un certo punto credevo che le corde si sarebbero spezzate.
Eleanor is Pavlov's dog with Schrodinger's soul, so retreats into the bathroom to recompose herself. Which really isn't being helped with the fucking hipsters who run this place piping in creepy children's music. Now, if you can think of a better way to recompose yourself than with the brutal murder of someone having a loud, romantic conversation in a bathroom stall, then I'd ask you to demonstrate in front of me, weirdo.
E tu cosa mi faresti?
Yes, that.
Ci hai messo un sacco. Tutto bene?
For her, yeah, except it's really fucking obvious who killed that woman. Unless the police can be convinced that it was a very dedicated suicide. Which, frankly, I think they might believe when they hear that fucking music. Eleanor has a think while her double's at performing and comes to the conclusion that she could have spent the last 15 years killing people, and she should probably start making up for lost time.
Domani ho diritto civile e sono in pieno panico da preesame. Mi chiudo in stanza che devo studiare.
Let's hope that exam is in how to die.
That woman was so fucking annoying, this probably counts as self-defense.
She's doing amazingly well at garroting her considering that wires were as tight as a plot. Anyway, she ends up in jail, and from the confusion in her face, I don't think she realised she was Jewish. That slow pullback is really simple and effective to depict an infinite void. An infinite void was necessary. If it was any smaller, she'd be able to annoy the other languishing souls. Anyway, it turns out that Wes apparently been collecting and reanimating Eleanor's victims.
You know, she's one of the few people who can truly say that she was late for her exam. Dead.
All this, I suppose, explains why Eleanor hasn't been caught. But being me, I'll immediately pivot to wondering how the fuck he broke into this woman's house and stole her corpse without being noticed by A, Eleanor, or B, anyone fucking else. He also brought back the toilet woman, which just raises even more questions, mostly based around how the fuck he managed to sneak in there with a medical bag and bring her back before her body was discovered. Does he follow Eleanor everywhere she goes? If so, how does he find the time to brood and drink heavily?
Papà.
Nicole! What? Sorry, niche joke.
Che ci fai qui?
I think it's called a murder intervention, but not the sort that involves vigilantism.
Sono venuto a salvare la tua anima.
You'll need to find it first.
Sei invecchiato.
Well, except in his beard. Blah 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 blah. She's fairly mad, both at him and in general.
What a twist!
This film killed Herbert West. Symbolism! Ow, that hurt my back. I'm not doing that again.
No. Non ho sconfitto io la morte.
But I was able to smuggle a microphone into the afterlife. Anyway, with West murdered, what's the plot to do but have Eleanor give birth to a new controversy?
That baby is made of tar. It's a tar infant. If only there was some sort of a controversial term I could use for such a thing. Think. Oh yes, I know.
What the fuck is an armist and why'd you have to bleep it out?
I was fine with all the murder and whatnot, but I draw the line at accidental, semi-obscure quasi-racism if you squint. Anyway, she does the rational thing and fills the bath with the tar, sits in her own personal Bjork album cover and ponders a soon-to-be cancellation. Looks like I was serious. People usually just get a Netflix special or hours of interviews talking about how they've been silenced. Anyway, it turns out I was wrong. This is actually the hot new trans treatment, with emphasis on the hot. As he's been replaced by Jeffrey Combs if he was Italian Zachary Quinto.
Bentornato. E tu chi sei?
Can't you tell? I'm a cosplayer. No, it's actually somehow even sillier.
Da non riconoscere tuo figlio.
Io non ho figli maschi.
Adesso sì.
At this point, I'd like to suggest that you take a few hours and watch the original Reanimator films and maybe read the short stories, just to confirm to yourself that none of this shit happens in them.
And then wait a few years until you find a production of the musical version. Not because it's got anything to do with this, but because I hear it's a fantastic time at the theatre. Anyway, this is where we came in with West reanimated and shackled by the chains of life, hanging out in the zombie break room. Anyway, who are these people? Probably some of Eleanor's victims they forgot to show us beforehand, but really it's anyone's guess.
So write yours down and mail it to somebody who gives a fuck.
Anyway, there's an escape attempt and one of the trio was sent ahead. This is still West's house and he has all kinds of useful advice for escaping. Like turn left at the ominous infinite void and try not to be distracted by the shrine to David Cocteau. Now, this very living looking corpse is less sexy Jeffrey Combs. Why is he naked in the show cave with a bunch of tools? It's less sexy Jeffrey Combs. Any answers you get will just be as confusing as the question. And why is she dancing around like she's auditioning for a movie directed by Sia? Because the film still seems to think that being Spectrum is the same as being the soulless living dead. So it looks like he teleported away and left a random tree branch grabbing a rest. Thank fuck, I was worried the film would have to go with a nonsensical escape plan. She went off to grab a tool to free West, and when she returns with it, she finds Italian Sex Combs has begun killing the other reanimants. The bald guy looks distracting like Caliban in Derek Jarman's The Tempest, so maybe that's a good thing. Hell, it might actually be the guy who played Caliban in Derek Jarman's The Tempest. He died a few years before this was made, but that wouldn't be much of an impediment given the plot. So he soon gets bored and just has them all play dead instead. Apart from anything else, it saves him bullets. He'll just resurrect them again later anyway.
Aspetto che tu faccia rapporto.
I want to know your theories about what the fuck you think has been going on with the plot.
I'm sure the reports will be fucking amazing. Subject A, formerly dead. Subject B, formerly dead. Subject C, soon to be formerly dead. They're back talking about Elizabeth from the start, the blonde reanimant. How West doesn't remember who she is, and perhaps how the syringe-based alcopop delivery system might help him remember. He injects each of the reanimants, including West, with a different coloured fluid. Not for a rational reason, like creating a zombie-themed Power Ranger squad, but to briefly turn the film into a mid-90s industrial music video. Okay, Now that he's randomly melting, the man who would be Combs looks like Nicholas Hoult starring in a Graham Linehan biopic. So who or what is Jeffrey Combs' porn edition? Well, here's the short answer.
I don't know.
The long answer is he's from beyond death and claims to be West's son, so I think he might be Eleanor's soul somehow gone evil and returned to life. If this is the case, then I assume she was either trans or just really wanted to be Jeffrey Combs.
I can relate.
He's working for powerful beings that exist in the darkness beyond death and eat the souls of the dead, and wants to create a gateway to allow them to spill out into our world.
Now, none of that's been revealed yet, so just forget I said that and listen to me talk some more bollocks.
It's hilarious that they added the Great Old Ones to this, because Reanimator is one of the few Lovecraft stories that wasn't even part of the Lovecraftian mythos. Sure, Miskatonic was in it, but there were no Great Old Ones or magic in the original short stories. The reason for that was Lovecraft didn't give a fuck about Reanimator. He was paid to write any old crap and he did. It started out as a veiled parody of Frankenstein, and by the end he'd removed the veils and asked for the head of John the Baptist. Adding the Great Old Ones is either the best or the worst fucking idea I've ever heard of in connection to Reanimator. And I remember how over a decade ago we came very close to having a W.B. Lovecraft show, which would have featured Herbert West as a hot, dangerous young science guy, hanging out with the other Lovecraftian protagonists at Miskatonic University, and experiencing the real, unknowable evil of college relationships.
That is real, by the way. It came ridiculously close to production before it got cancelled.
Anyway, regardless of all that, I think it's fucking genius to have the servant, or possibly avatar, of the unseen power that existed before this film be represented by Jeffrey Combs' version of Herbert West. Now that is how you graciously recognise that you're not getting into the shadow of an iconic original.
Wait, where was I? Oh yeah, everyone's dead, and or alive, and or miscellaneous.
This shot looks like a Grand Theft Auto cover designed by Caravaggio. It's the moment Eleanor was run over, and inside the car we see the driver, Elizabeth, getting counselling from her own victim.
Possiamo cancellare questo momento. Possiamo scacciare questo dolore per sempre.
No, Elizabeth.
Which is unusually reasonable of Eleanor, all things considered. Oh, wait, she hands her a shard of glass, which is exactly how Elizabeth killed herself out of guilt. Good. Boring performance in a way.
You're not much better!
I gotta say, I love how this one's reaction to seeing him murder the others is to say, "Ay, ay, 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 ay," and save him the bother. Anyway, Elizabeth died again. I think someone got her fluid mixed up with Gatorade, but that's soon rectified with some all-new fluid that started turning her into the Joker.
That's a very good question. Anyway,
he needs her alive to make West remember who she is and what she did. Why can't just tell West is the sort of thing a lesser filmmaker would explain, the sort of coward that enjoys being clear and coherent. Anyway, if she manages to do that, he'll finally let her die.
Ti farò dono di un sonno eterno senza sogno.
Just like the main Reanimator film series since 2003.
If I could save time in a bottle, the first thing that I'd like to do.
A te la scelta, Herbert.
Perché non los dos?
Well done, everyone, giving the man who has nothing to lose access to a gun. This is so full of shit, we're long overdue an exposition dump, and that shooting was the laxative. This is the big confrontation between West and the Adonis, formerly known as Jeffrey Combs, and it's asking all the important questions.
Chi sei veramente tu? Uno scienziato? Uno stregone?
Personally, I thought he was an Oliver Reed impersonator who had access to a chemistry set. Anyway, Combs-ish explains most of what he's doing. West punched a hole into the darkness where the soul-eating monsters dwell, and he's come through to make the hole larger so they can get into our world and
do, weird things to us.
I think my favourite part of this scene is Elizabeth, once more alive, uneasy on her feet, whining in pain and desperate for attention, while the other two ignore her because they're too wrapped up in their own weird drama. It's like any number of nights in most gay bars.
Bullet time, so cheap he couldn't afford to dodge.
Yep, that's me. I bet you're wondering how I got into this mess. Well, you're not gonna find out much. As he's, ironically, some kind of Lovecraftian monster, he'll soon resurrect and West needs time to create some more fluid. So how does he make it? The time, I mean. Naturally, with an angry revenant and the sharp end of a knife.
He looks so put out by it all.
I'm glad he stopped when he did. She was about 40% of the way to blackface. Turns out that West made a sleeping drug. Jeffrey Combs, the sexy Halloween costume, is basically a Pokemon, you see. While death isn't effective, sleep is super effective. Anyway, now that she stabbed someone for him, he can finally forgive her for Eleanor's death, and she can finally die. Because, while gunshots aren't fatal, forgiveness is.
Remember, kids, forgive your enemies. They might die from shock.
I can't believe that's what finally did her in. Who knew it'd be that easy? Anyway, West decides to take his fight to the afterlife and go searching for Eleanor's soul, which I guess isn't less attracted to Jeffrey Combs after all? I do not suggest entering hell that way, because it can be hard to get back out again. Though since the serum apparently brings you back to life, unless you get forgiven for something, it's not so much a leap as a bungee jump into the afterlife.
My, there's a lot of phlegm in the afterlife. It wasn't there the last time I visited.
Oh, no, see, that's just because of the COVID.
Oh, fair enough.
Some kind of invisible barrier.
Oh, so that's what an invisible barrier looks like.
Holy fuck, it's deep thought.
At least I now know the answer to the ultimate question about life, the universe, whatever the fuck this film's about.
42!
42?!
It was a tough assignment.
He wanders the void, avoiding the monsters in the dark, meeting the other lost souls, occasionally finding their radioactive scrotums, and interrupting their snot mining. This woman, like West and the others in the void, is being hunted by the formless creatures in the dark.
Non hanno occhi. Ti annusano.
Che cosa sono?
The nothing, probably.
Big, strong hands.
No, I think it's Hastur the Unspeakable, but we don't talk about him. She can feel its approach, they're coming for her, and while she could give less fucks, it'd be way too much effort.
Come quando gli elefanti si ritirano per andare a morire.
Yes, just like elephants, when they apparently wait in a dark room to die all over again. You can really see the mix of great and fucking awful in these shots. She's in a pretty convincing void, just chilling next to a polystyrene pillar covered in lube, but the green glow doesn't look unearthly. It looks like someone spilt a drink on the editing computer while they were doing the chroma key, and this somehow resulted in hyperspace happening behind West. But I think the crowning achievement in the Venn diagram between brilliant and hilariously fucking bad is a depiction of how the nothingness eats her piece by piece, by turning out the lights and painting her black. I had a white chick once and I had to paint her black.
Stai lontano dall'oscurità.
But what if I believe in a thing called love?
Anyway, it turns out that Elizabeth is in a whole other afterlife, full of blackjacks and hookers and the sun and rocks and stuff. Is this where the minerals go when they die? If so, it says a lot about her performance. Ow, 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 ow. So she's following Uncle Fester, and given her history with scary men in terrible and confusing circumstances, I'm sure this will end brilliantly for her.
Si può sapere dove andiamo?
Somewhere they filmed a lot of Doctor Who.
In case you didn't realize, we crossed the border to full Arthouse some time ago.
Io non voglio tornare indietro.
Non voglio tornare indietro.
Perché ripeti?
Perché ripeti?
And now we're fast approaching Begotten territory.
Quasi-literally.
Snap, what a happy sound. Snap is the happiest sound I've found. You make clap, snap, crackle, Rice Krispies.
West continues his journey into the Upside Down, carefully remembering all the black voidy landmarks in the black void to give the illusion that he knows where the fuck he is. Okay, where the fuck did he get a branch from? Did he prune Idrisil, the world tree? But in a shocking twist, the black void that West is failing to explore is inside a bath, which is inside the black void that West is trying to explore, which is insane.
I think that's the bath Eleanor was taken from. Must have died off screen.
West is so shocked that he dropped the lights, and the lights were so shocked that it became jam jars. Anyway, the ground starts writhing and undulating as something's trying to escape. Congratulations, it's an urukai! Nah, it's Eleanor, all grown up, even though her soul's been trapped here since she was a kid. Unless this is her body, which was pulled in via the bath.
Try not to think about it. That's when the pain comes.
Yes, don't look. You'll either melt or get turned into a pillar of salt, and either way that's a waste of a trap. She gets back in the bath and is duly sucked to this plane of reality, and West closes the gateway by overturning the bath, therefore trapping himself in the afterlife, I think. All the tar water turns into the centerfold for Bed Bath & Beyond the Void of Man's Understanding's in-store magazine, and then into ferrofluid, which you always suspected was evil, nice to have confirmation. Anyway, the ferrofluid becomes a wall which draws West to it, and that's it. That's it for West, I mean, because we have 10 more minutes with Eleanor.
Surprised? I was too!
Aqua.
Room service. Room service.
Aqua.
Moisturizer. Okay, I get that she's somehow been sucked into the equally unexplained afterlife dimension that's in a quarry for some reason, but why is she suddenly wearing clothes? Not only was she naked in the void, but she was naked before she was pulled into the void. Guys, you're Italian. She really should be more naked. This place is somehow worse than the void. It's burning hot, except when she tries to drink. Then it's biting cold. The water is putrid and salty, and her only company apart from Fog Monster's CGI double is this dude. She spent so long in the quarry, it's like she was searching for a Doctor Who plot, and now it looks like she's found him. So, in exchange for water, he wants the bell that's on her wrist.
All'ultima parte di me.
You rang, now I ring. When I saw the Greek-style jug here, I actually worked out what I think is going on here. This is the Hellenistic afterlife. I made a Sheol joke earlier, and they are quite similar, but where ancient Sheol was just one place, the ancient Greek afterlife had 3 sections. The Dark House of Death, where most people go, which is the Void, Tartarus, the place of torment, where the very bad go, and the Elysian Fields, where the very good go. This is Tartarus. Anyway, it's all a bit moot as the now homeless Jeffrey Combs impersonators come for her under the bath, which just turns the film into the slowest desert chase in film history. I don't exactly know who he is, but he's very slowly approaching. None of this is real. I can tell because of the plot. Rub-a-dub-dub protagonists fighting over a tub. Anyway, night falls and he swapped places with her. She's gonna live eternally in the daytime and he'll live in the night. And each sunrise and sunset they'll have brief crossovers at the bathtub as they switch places. It's worse for him though, because even the Undertaker's fucking with them, pointing at the water and then turning it to dust in his face. Classic troll move. Anyway, he's losing the plot, much like the rest of the film.
Non bestemmiare.
Anyway, he's going to spend eternity trying to reunite with her to reopen the gateway between the void and the earth, and she's going to try and not do that. Overall, that is somehow one of the less romantic examples I've seen in a film of attempted vomit possession rape analogy. There they go, an eternity together but apart, never joining and never separating. A perfect yin and yang between her and whoever the fuck this dude actually is. I still think he's somehow her soul.
E dovunque sei tu, là sono anch'io.
Honestly, much of the end of this film just looks like the weirdest Armani advert ever made.
Sono in ogni granello di polvere. Puoi raccogliermi, ma raccogliendo me, raccoglierai te stessa.
What the hell was that?
This film raises many questions, such as, is there DLC to finish the fucking story? For a film called Herbert West Reanimator, isn't it a bit weird that he ran away from it? And I wonder whose idea it was to turn Jeffrey Combs into his own slutty Halloween costume. Like I said earlier, this is fairly impenetrable for big chunks of it. Somehow it has less to do with the original short stories than the older films, but I can't bring myself to hate it. It's a bit of a puzzle, and if you go in expecting that, you can enjoy it. But if you want a straight adaptation, then boy are you watching the wrong director. This film much more easily slots in with something like Fellini's Satyricon than it does with Stuart Gordon's Reanimator. And seeing the images it conjures up filmed in fairly lo-fi digital is a damn shame. I wish Zuckon had been working in the 70s. His brand of art house horror may well have taken off. It's a film of contrasts, horror and art, highbrow and lowbrow, beauty and ugliness, and even greatness and shitness. It's not the fourth Reanimator film I'd have chosen, I still want another Combs one, but I'm still glad it exists.
If nothing else, it allows you to be a Reanimator hipster all, oh no, I prefer my Reanimator all Italian and artisanal, with indefinable demon men and a pinch of violins, thank you very much. Anyway, I'm the Amanda Hagan, and I have to live with it every day.